Hello and welcome to the Muslim Community Citizens Advice Bureau Rights Here, Rights Now podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the Patient Advice and Support Service. And joining me today, I have one of our advisors, Yvonne, who works on the advice service. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, first of all, can you tell me a little bit about what your role is within the service?
Okay, so what I do is NHS complaints. I know that sounds a bit overwhelming, but sometimes it can be, but that's exactly what I do. It can be any complaint at all from a person or a user or a carer or a patient themselves that have used the services which NHS is attached to. So that can be anything from your GP to your district nurse to your neurosurgeon, and even the people that serve you your meals in the hospital, provided it's provided by NHS Highland. So yeah, that's what I do. Come in all shapes and sizes and guises, and there's a few of them. And of course, with the after effects of the coronavirus, things are slowly, very slowly getting back to normal. So, and people are a bit exasperated with the delays. So, and every day, there are stories, health stories, as I call them, on the BBC News website from all over Scotland. So
Okay,
there's plenty of complaints.
Yeah, so really you cover complaints from every facet and area of the NHS, be that your dentist, as you said, your surgeon, or just other staff within hospitals and medical practices. It can involve anybody, and it
Yep.
can be a complaint about anything.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we can do. We can have a look at it. Yep.
So what exactly is the service?
Well, it's in Highland. I'll speak about Highland because that's the area that we actually cover. Myself, I cover Caithness, Sutherland, and Ross and Cromarty, and I have 3 other colleagues that cover the rest of the Highland area. We all work part-time. Personally, I'm 3 days a week. And what we actually do is engage with people, speak to people, go through the problem with the person or their family, and they decide, always they have the right to decide what they take forward and how the complaint will be shaped. I'm quite sure none of us are medically qualified that are actually doing the job. I don't see that as a disadvantage because it means you've got to really, really think about things and do quite a bit of research, which can be extremely interesting. Just as well, I'm not a hypochondriac. Otherwise, I would get a bit worried about some of the things that I do come across.
So you and your colleagues, you provide advice and support for patients of the NHS who have had issues and want to potentially take those issues forward. So you would take the initial complaint, provide advice, and then look at the next steps with them.
That's basically it. Yes, yeah. We look at the complaint, we work through the complaint, and eventually whittle it down to something that's acceptable to the patient, and we take it forward. We don't do anything without their say-so, and there can be more than one draft version of the complaint. But once they're happy and they sign off on that, we start the ball rolling, and that's the first stage of the complaint.
And I think it's really important to highlight that the service is a free service and also a completely confidential service.
Absolutely. It is completely free at the point of contact. It's confidential. It's independent advice and support for patients of the NHS in Scotland. Now, it is in Scotland, and that's relevant for us because we've now established a helpline. So each patient and advice staff member actually does a stint on the helpline, so it can be anywhere in Scotland that we happen to be speaking to. So that's why it's still got NHS in Scotland, so anywhere in Scotland.
Okay, so generally you cover, as you mentioned, the areas that you do in the Highlands, but you're also part of the helpline, which covers the whole of Scotland. So if you use the helpline, you could be speaking to someone anywhere in the country.
That's true. That's absolutely true, and I have done, and even abroad.
Oh, really?
Yes, and south of the border, because in Scotland people have got connections all over the world, family members, whatever, and they've come in through the helpline and managed to track us down in Scotland and used that as a point of contact. So that's always been quite interesting.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that does sound interesting. So the Right Here, Right Now podcast that we're doing and the project that we run really concentrates on what people's rights are and the responsibilities that go alongside those. So what are people's rights and responsibilities in relation to NHS services?
Right. Well, what the rights are basically, and I'll keep this short, access. So you have the right to access NHS services that are appropriate to your needs. That's the first one. The second one is communication and participation. And that means that you have the right as a patient to get information about your health and the services that are available to you. You also have the right to be involved in the decisions about your care. Next one is confidentiality. You have the right for your personal health information to be kept confidential, to know how it is used and how you can access it. And we go on to the next one, which is respect. You have the right to be treated as an individual and with dignity and respect, no matter what. And finally, safety. You have the right to the best care and treatment possible by qualified staff in a safe and clean setting. So that's a very potted version of what your rights and responsibilities are. And of course, these can be expanded on when you're trying to familiarise yourself with the rights and responsibilities of the patient that presents with that particular problem. So that's the basics, really, is what I'm saying on that one. Just the last is feedback and complaints. I should have had that at the first, being a NHS complaints advisor. So feedback and complaints, you have the right to have a say about your healthcare and to have any concerns or complaints dealt with in the most appropriate way. And of course, behind all these rights and responsibilities, there's a whole heap of legislation and rules that go on behind the scenes. And very often it can be tricky to try and manage people's expectations. It depends on where you get them. It depends how angry they are or upset they are, how the emotions are running when you come across them and at what point. So it's always managing their expectations. So that can be challenging at times as well.
Yeah, I imagine it is quite an upsetting thing if something does go wrong or you have an issue with the service that you receive from the NHS. You do expect to have these rights, to have that respect, that safety, to have everything be confidential and to have access to the services you need. So if somebody doesn't get that, they're understandably going to be quite upset and quite angry possibly.
Yeah.
But it's about the aftermath of that, I guess, with you taking that complaint, but making sure that they understand this is what could possibly happen as a result of this and make sure that they don't end up more upset by the end of it by not getting the outcome that they're looking for.
That's true, and that's why it's important to establish the connection early on in this process so that you've got a good rapport with the patient or the carer or the family and manage their expectations and their expectations and their understanding also of what how it's come about, what's gone wrong, and how it can be corrected to their satisfaction. So it's a learning curve for everybody, not just myself as an advisor, but also the patient and the organisation, which in this case it's NHS Highland.
So, as you said, the rights that we've just discussed, so access, communication and participation, confidentiality, respect, safety, and then the right to make feedback and complaints. Would you say that those are your core rights that you have as a patient of the NHS? Those are the
Absolutely.
core things that you can expect, but as you said, those can be expanded on. There's a lot more to those than just the brief descriptions that we've discussed today.
That's correct. Yeah, that's really just an overview of what your actual rights are.
And do you find that when you receive complaints, these rights end up kind of being the root of that, where something along the way has not met someone's right to one of these things?
Yes, or a combination of all of them,
Mhm.
to be honest. I mean, most people realise that they can make a complaint. It's only when you get into the nitty gritty of the complaint, how it's come about. And as we all know, there are various shades of a complaint that can pass over your desk, and there are always more than one side to the story. So, you've got to mediate to a certain extent what's the best way forward for the patient.
And I think that highlights why it's so important for people to understand what their rights and responsibilities are. Because instead of someone just coming to you and saying, "I have a complaint about this because I didn't like the way that it turned out,"
Yeah,
instead, they can say, "I have a complaint about this because I wasn't afforded the level of respect I should have been, or I didn't feel like I received the correct communication about the care I was going to receive, and I wasn't able to make the choices I should have been able to make." So, understanding exactly what should have happened and what they had the right to means that they can understand better what's gone wrong.
exactly. And it's a two-way street. We have responsibilities as patients in our dealings with NHS, as it were.
Yeah, and I think that's true of most things where you have a right to something. In order to maintain that right, you also have responsibilities along the way, either to best allow people to help you or to make sure that the correct information is given. I think the two definitely go hand in hand, and particularly with the NHS, there's got to be effort from both sides.
Yep.
Okie doke. So if you have a concern or an issue or something's gone wrong with an NHS service or an NHS treatment that you've received, how can PASS help you? PASS, and by that I mean the Patient Advice and Support Service, or PASS as we'll call it for short.
Right. If you're fortunate to have a Citizen Advice Bureau locally, that could be your first port of call. You could go online if you wish. We have a website, and we've also got our helpline. So, as I say, anyone can answer the helpline in Scotland that's attached to the PASS service, and the case will be written up and triaged and passed to the most appropriate advisor in that particular area. So there's plenty in. It's a free phone number that you can use.
All right, perfect. So what I'll do is I'll put a note of the phone number and the links to the PASS website and the Scottish Government website down below in the comments and also in our social media posts so that people can get easy access to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you take your complaint to the Patient Advice and Support Service, how do PASS then take that forward? What do PASS do?
Okay. So as I've said, it's the best way is to have face to face, if at all possible. It's always the best in these situations. I feel it helps the advisor, I have to say, and it also helps the person that you're going to be working with and for, because that's what you're doing, and it gives you a better understanding of what's gone wrong and what they actually expect the outcome to be. So we would help to give feedback or make comments, raise concerns, or make a complaint if it's a complaint about the treatment that you've received from NHS Highland. That will be able to work with them and work with the NHS. It's a big body to raise a complaint against, and it can be a bit daunting for people, to be honest. So they certainly do rely on us to take that away from them and give them a bit of breathing space. We can attend meetings. Certainly did in the past, and I see that's happening again. So we can go along, if invited, to a meeting with all parties and discuss the complaint or concern. We can help them access their medical and clinical records. It's more common for people to do that nowadays. But again, it really is quite a simple form, and that shouldn't be any problem. And it's now free of charge, which it never was before. We do try to help people to understand that options may be limited with regard to treatment, care, and support. And most people do fully resolve their issues with the NHS when they've come to pass. So, yes, and every step of the way, we do an awful lot of hand holding, to be honest with you, because depending on the nature of the complaint and the circumstances surrounding it, that's just what we have to do, and it takes for it as long as it takes.
So I think really what you've described is you essentially act as a middleman, kind of taking some of the workload off the person that's making complaints. So dealing with, the forms and things like that, just to take the pressure off, but also as a support there for them to help them understand what's happening and break things down for them to make it understandable, to make it manageable. Because as you said, the NHS is a big body to have to deal with, and these complaints can take some time. So to have somebody there to support, to advise, and to act as a middleman to deal with some of the difficult things, I think that's brilliant.
Thank you. So do I.
So what would you say are some of the things that you would need to do or think about when you want to raise a complaint, maybe before you get in contact with PASS?
Well, I always say to people, if it makes you mad, you've got to do something about it. So there is no point stewing about it. Pick up the phone and just say, run it by someone at PASS, and they'll give you all the information that you need to make an informed decision. It could be that the advisor has a connection with their colleagues in NHS Highland, where we could possibly informally find out some information as to what's gone wrong, why that ward has been closed, why the theatre is not operational, why operations have been cancelled, or clinics can't carry on, So we are able to get a little bit of inside information, and I do mean it is only a little bit, but it might be enough to give the client or the patient a bit of background information that just makes it a bit more understandable as to why this particular thing has happened to them, and we can maybe save a lot of time and work and get a quick response that way. If the complaint is more complex and they think, no, that's not good enough, then they've got choices. They can go on to the NHS Highlands um, website and they can give a complaint, concern, and feedback on a specific form, which I understand that they continually to look at and update. So they've got that. But if they do want to go and they've had their discussions and conversations with whoever they've needed to, and they're still of the same mindset, what they could do is they could maybe start to have a look at a diary if they keep a diary, or even start a timeline. So the timeline to me would be what was the backstory? What got you to this place? What was the problem, and why you ended up in that particular place? And then going forward, the main evidence of the timeline would be dates, times, wards, personnel, names, GP, consultant, neurosurgeon, whoever had dealings in or around that time that caused you to make the complaint. It's all beneficial because they need that information when it gets pulled together to take it forward as a complaint. And don't leave it too long because you have 6 months to make a complaint. Now, I know that seems like a long time, and it is quite a long time. But if you're going through treatment, you're ill, you've got other underlying issues, you've got a young family, you've lost your job, a person has died, you're going through the grieving process. There could be loads of things. It's just life. So 6 months may sound a long time, but it isn't really. And the reality is, the more you can remember, the better. Getting it down on paper, and we can get it in. Now, I did mention that you could be going through the grieving process. You might have had a breakdown yourself. So there is a little leeway to argue your case and say, in this instance, I would like an extension from the 6 to the 12 months, and that's acceptable. And even then, when you get that in, even if you get your complaint in at 6 months, it can take, again, because of the backlog of COVID, it can take another up to 12 months, depending on the severity of the complaint, and perhaps even longer. Now, that is a long time. So people should really be prepared for a lengthy time, a lengthy wait, and it's not going to be an instant fix by any manner of means. So they've got to be almost counselled into that and say, that's it, it's in the system, and we just have to wait for an outcome.
Okay, so I think in terms of when you're contacting PASS, what you really need to do is just be prepared, because you're going to be asked for more information and you're going to need that information to evidence your complaint or your claim. Be prepared for your complaint to take quite a long time to process, and also think about what it is that you want as an outcome of that complaint. Do you want an apology? Do you want an explanation as to what happened? Do you want your complaint to possibly trigger some changes in the way that things are done so that the same thing doesn't happen to other people? Come with evidence, come with patience, and come with an understanding of what exactly it is that you want.
Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah, because it is your right to receive that support and advice. And that's all we're really doing, is helping you to look at what options there are for you, and find out some more information on how to make the complaint, and and just take you through it.
Okie doke. I think that's a great place to wrap up for today, Yvonne, if you're happy with that.
I am indeed, yes.
As Yvonne mentioned, there is the PASS website, so the Patient Advice and Support Service website, which is www.patientadvicescotland.org.uk, and you can use the web chat service on that site as well. You can also phone the new PASS helpline, which is 0800 917 2127. And alternatively, you can contact your local Citizens Advice Bureau. So for us in Ross and Cromarty, that is the Ross and Cromarty Citizens Advice Bureau. Our number is 01349 883 333, or alternatively, you can email us at advisor@allnesscab.casonline.org.uk. As always, if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like us to cover, areas of concern that you have, you can email us at the address that I've just mentioned. You can pop a comment on our YouTube stream of this podcast, or you can pop a comment on our social media posts, or even message us on Facebook, whichever is easiest for you. We really like to hear from you and find out what concerns that you have and areas that you want us to discuss. We're certainly happy to fit those into our podcast schedule. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining me today, Yvonne. It was really interesting to learn about the PASS service and what you can do to help people who have had issues and complaints with the NHS. I'm very, very grateful for your knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.